What is the scariest theory known to man? The dark forest theory, that there are lots of other advanced civilizations out there in space, but they're concealing their presence because they know how suicidally dangerous it is to be broadcasting your planet's location out to the universe. Edit. Every variation on the reply, "Yeah, I watched that Kurzgesagt video too," has been commented about 100 times now. Save yourselves the wear and tear on your favorite thumb, guys. While I have your attention, I'd like to recommend the excellent YouTube channel, Quinn's Ideas, whose video regarding the dark forest principle I did actually recently see. The Great Filter. The idea that we see no other civilizations out in space because they hit some wall that made them go extinct. Whatever it may be, it could be the reason we see no intelligent life out there. The question is, are we past the filter? Or is the worst still to come? That at any moment at any given time some unknown cosmic thing could come from outer space and wipe us out in a blink, i.e. vacuum decay or gamma-ray burst. Even our sun could just produce a huge enough solar storm and we are basically doomed. This is the correct thread for bedtime. The theory that fucks with me the most is that space is infinite. I can't wrap my head around the idea of something having no boundary or end, and it creeps me out that it's possible. I heard on another thread about what would be the scariest thing found at the bottom of Mariana's Trench, and someone said the top of a skyscraper. That theory that you're a bitch if you make 2 trips to carry in your groceries. Quantum immortality. If correct, it guarantees that you will never die. It guarantees nothing else. The theory of proton decay, where every single bit of baryonic matter will eventually just spontaneously dissolve into radiation and fundamental particles, guaranteeing that there will be no survivors at the end of the universe is, yeah, terrible. That a more stable form of vacuum exists AMD, if it did, we would collapse into it. It could be headed towards us now and we literally would never know it's coming. If you get blasted with a ton of radiation, your body instantly dies. But you will keep living for a while. Potentially weeks, like the Japanese nuclear plant worker who took more radiation than anyone else in history. Your DNA will shatter throughout your body, meaning as cells die, they will never be replaced again. Your body essentially starts rotting while you're still using it. The idea that the Uncanny Valley is because of the ancient hominins we used to interact with during the Pleistocene. Sure, there were interbreeding events, but imagine if you had no idea what a Neanderthal or a Denisovan were and saw one for the first time. You and your family have been traveling far from home and seek refuge in a cave for the night. You get a fire going, everyone starts to relax. Then out of nowhere, this almost human-looking being walks up. You all panic and run. Reacting with fear was probably the easiest way to make it out of an encounter like that alive. Music theory. The fact that it would take 7 minutes for Earth to know that the sun exploded and it could have exploded 6 minutes ago. Solipsism. Basically there's no way to prove that anyone other than yourself actually exists. You can dive deeper if you like, it's actually pretty interesting. That we may live the same life over and over without knowing. Cold death of the universe. That the speed at which the universe is expanding is to the point where gravity will never pull it back. Matter will spread out and cool down and decay until everything, everywhere, just stops. Forever. What if our understandings of physics and science, what we base our whole lives around, is just wrong? A man born without eyes cannot see. What if we are missing a huge chunk of reality, simply due to an inability to detect it? Eternal recurrence suggests that this universe will be reborn again over and over endlessly, and so we will also be forced to relive the same life just as many times. Take a moment to consider your odds of being here, now, with infinite time before and after you. False vacuum decay. In quantum field theory, a false vacuum is a hypothetical vacuum that is stable, but not in the most stable state possible, it is metastable. It may last for a very long time in that state, but could eventually decay to the more stable state, an event known as false vacuum decay. The most common suggestion of how such a decay might happen in our universe is called bubble nucleation. If a small region of the universe by chance reached a more stable vacuum, this bubble, also called bounce, would spread. That our consciousness doesn't actually direct our actions, but just makes up stories to explain our actions to itself. Consciousness might not even be useful to our evolution, it could just be a weird phenomena that came about as our brains became more complex and developed more self-monitoring systems. I like the one about how the existence of the Uncanny Valley implies that at some point there was an evolutionary reason to be afraid of something that looked human but wasn't. Learn about the Uncanny Valley if you're one of today's lucky 10,000. All these theories are concerning, but most of them would kill us immediately without us noticing, and that's fine. Realizing we're going to die as a civilization in a matter of hours, days, is what freaks me out the most. Last Thursdayism. Basically that the entire universe was created last Thursday, and everything that is ancient has just been made to appear so. In reality, everything in the universe is only a week or so old. Link. The Fermi paradox on why we haven't been visited by aliens. Here's a video explaining it better than I ever could. In my opinion, the theory that we have no free will and our experiences completely determine everything about us is the one that keeps me up at night the most. And if it's true, I honestly don't think I'll keep living. That death is a nothingness, which is likely true, and scares the fuck out of me. Aliens Alien Theory by Neil deGrasse Tyson. Let's say intelligence is your ability to compose poetry, symphonies, do art, math and science. Chimps can't do any of that, yet we share 99% DNA. Everything that we are, that distinguishes us from chimps, emerges from that 1% difference. Imagine a life form whose brainpower is to ours is to a chimpanzee's. To such a species, our highest mental achievements would be trivial. Their toddlers, instead of learning their ABCs on Sesame Street, would learn multivariable calculus on Boolean Boulevard. Our most complex theorems, our deepest philosophies, the cherished works of our most creative artists, would be projects their schoolkids bring home for mom and dad to display on the refrigerator door. Scary. That we are alone in the universe. To me, nothing is scarier than death. The notion that I won't exist, and that everyone that is alive around me will be gone. I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night to this thought and it is suffocating. I would rather return to a nightmare than awaken to the contemplation of death. The inevitable heat death of the universe is a harrowing topic. Essentially, the energy of the known universe is finite and will eventually deplete completely, leaving space as we know it dark, cold and inert forever. It's difficult to grapple with. That humans may not have the ability to comprehend everything in the universe. Like literally physically impossible for our brains to grasp it. A gorilla is only 1% behind us on the evolutionary scale, and what we see as amazing such as them painting is what our infants are doing. If there is an intelligent species even 1% further than us, their infants are doing astrophysics and their adults are doing things every day that our brains couldn't comprehend. That our universe isn't going to collapse back into a singularity, but continue indefinitely to branch and extend outward until every single atom is stretched outwards and apart to its absolute limit, until the entire known universe shatters due to the tension. Well, thanks people, now I have found another rabbit hole that will keep me entertained. There is a skeleton man living inside your body. Just the concept of infinity, eternity. Regardless of who's correct about what happens when you die, it's terrifying. Either the lights go out for good and your consciousness is lost forever, or the afterlife is a never-ending Groundhog's Day scenario. Gives me anxiety sometimes if I think too deep about it. I had a breakdown in Sunday school some 20-odd years ago about it, and the deacon told me that heaven was so amazing and perfect that eternity was a blessing. I didn't buy it. Having it all end is immensely frightening. Having it never end seems worse. That universal common ancestor theory, that all life evolved from a single cell 3.5 billion years ago. Think about the infinity of generations of beings fighting to survive only for you to read this comment that we're all just one big family killing each other for 3.5 billion years and counting. Fermi's paradox. Two possibilities exist. Either we are alone in the universe or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. The scariest theory, to me, is that reality is like the Library of Babel. There are infinite realities, most being nothing but garbage information. However, some realities make sense and tell a story, by happenstance. This means that literally everything happens somewhere. Edit. Said Tower of Babel at first by accident. The theory of life being a flat circle. You will relive the events of your life over, and over, and over, for eternity. Everything you've felt, all the pain and suffering, will happen to you forever, with no way of stopping it or knowing that it's happened before. Not really a theory but being the oldest person alive. There's just something so chilling about the fact that literally every human that existed at the time of her birth is now dead except for her. She's the last of the human race in her snapshot of time. If you try too hard to imagine another dimension, the moment you finally manage to imagine and see that dimension, you can never go back to a 3D. That if there is other life in the universe, it's entirely possible that we're the most advanced. The filter theory, it could be behind us rendering us safe, but it could be in front of us rendering us dead. The single electron theory. A positron is identical to an electron moving backwards through time. And since all electrons and all positrons have identical, to the best of our current knowledge, properties, it's possible that all the electrons and all the positrons in the universe is just one particle moving forwards and backwards through time. This means that the future is already decided and there is no free will. Spontaneous human combustion. Personally, I think reincarnation is terrifying, the knowledge of spending decades of a life you may or may not enjoy just for it all to be forgotten in the long run. I would like to think the Boltzmann brain theory is pretty scary. Essentially that due to the randomness of particles floating in space, if you had infinity to monitor them, somewhere out there would be anything you could ever imagine. A dragon, a robot, a planet, even your own brain. Statistically, you're more likely to be a brain floating somewhere out in space due to the random flow of particles, and that brain has created everything you know is life. That is more likely than the fact our planet has gone through so much and led our evolution to produce Homo sapiens over millions of years. It's been refuted, but I love to think about things like that. It's been refuted by several people and other theories have been crafted off of it. It's interesting to think about. The theory that an all-out nuclear war wouldn't destroy nearly as much of civilization as we think. If this theory becomes widely accepted, the chances of a nuclear war happening becomes more likely. That piss is actually stored in the balls.